The morning shift on Luna Base started like any other. Admiral Kate Morrison sipped her coffee while reviewing routine reports from the Sol Defense Fleet. Outside the massive viewing windows, Earth hung like a blue marble against the black of space. 300 years after humanity first reached the stars, this view still took her breath away. The peaceful moment shattered when Lieutenant Danny Ross burst into her office. "Admiral, we have an unknown vessel approaching the outer system. It's broadcasting emergency signals." Kate set down her coffee and followed Danny to the command center. The main screen showed a ship unlike anything in human databases. It looked more grown than built, with flowing curves that reminded her of deep-sea creatures. The vessel limped through space, trailing debris and venting atmosphere. "Any response to our hail?" Kate asked. "Yes, ma'am. They're asking for immediate assistance. The translator is having trouble with their language, but they say they need to speak with Earth's leaders." Kate nodded. "Send Captain Ryan Blake. Have him take the UES Harmony and intercept them. Full diplomatic protocols." 2 hours later, Ryan found himself face to face with the strangest beings he had ever seen. The aliens looked like walking dolphins with smooth blue skin and large, intelligent eyes. They moved in special suits filled with water, their voices coming through electronic translators. "I am Ambassador Naya of the Zalani people," the lead alien said. Her voice carried sadness that needed no translation. "We come seeking help from the humans of Earth." Ryan leaned forward in his chair. "We're listening, Ambassador. What kind of help do you need?" Naya's large eyes seemed to grow even sadder. "Our people are dying, Captain Blake. We are healers, not warriors. For thousands of years, we have lived in peace, helping other species with our medical knowledge. But now the Korthak Empire wants to destroy us." She activated a small device, and holographic images filled the air between them. Ryan saw beautiful underwater cities with crystal spires reaching toward alien suns. Then the images changed, showing massive gray warships and scenes of destruction. "The Korthak are warriors," Naya continued. "They believe that might makes right. They want our sacred world, Aquatica Prime, where the ancient healing springs flow. These springs have saved millions of lives across the galaxy, but the Korthak see only the valuable minerals beneath them." Ryan studied the images of the Korthak ships. They looked like metal sharks built for one purpose: war. "What exactly are you asking from Earth?" "We know humans have ships and weapons," Naya said hopefully. "Perhaps you could send one vessel to our system? Just having human presence might make the Korthak think twice about attacking. We've heard that humans value honor and justice." Ryan almost smiled at the innocence in her request. "One ship?" She had no idea what she was asking for. "Ambassador, can you tell me more about these Korthak? How many ships do they have? What are their capabilities?" Naya shared more holographic data. The Korthak Empire controlled dozens of star systems, with a fleet of over 300 warships. They had conquered 12 peaceful species in the last century, enslaving populations and stripping worlds of resources. "They gave us an ultimatum," Naya said, her translator struggling with her emotional state. "Surrender Aquatica Prime in 6 months or they will destroy all our worlds." "We cannot fight them, Captain Blake. Our people have never built weapons of war. We are healers, teachers, and artists. We know only how to create life, not take it." Ryan felt something stir in his chest. It was the same feeling his grandfather had described when talking about the old wars on Earth, when good people faced evil and had to make hard choices. "What can your people offer in return for our help?" "Our medical knowledge," Naya said eagerly. "We can cure diseases that still plague your species. Our healing technology could save millions of human lives. We ask for so little in return. Just one ship, one show of strength to make the Korthak hesitate." The meeting lasted 3 more hours. Ryan learned about Zalani culture, their deep respect for all life and their complete lack of military technology. They had survived in a dangerous galaxy through diplomacy and their reputation as healers. Even the most warlike species rarely attacked doctors, but the Korthak were different. They saw kindness as weakness and peace as an invitation to conquest. Intelligence reports suggested they had plans beyond the Zalani worlds. Earth itself might be next. When the UES Harmony docked at Luna Base, Admiral Morrison was waiting. She had listened to every word of the meeting through secure communication. Her face was grim as Ryan stepped off the ship. "What do you think, Captain?" she asked. "I think we're looking at genocide if we don't act," Ryan replied. "These people are everything we claim to protect in our Federation charter. They're peaceful, they help others, and they're facing extinction from bullies. Kate nodded slowly. The Korthak Empire has been on our watch list for years. Intelligence says they've been preparing for expansion toward human space. If they take the Zilani worlds, they'll have a perfect launching point for attacks on our outer colonies. They walked through the corridors of Luna Base, passing windows that showed the shipyards where human vessels were built and repaired. A few dozen ships floated in the construction bays, destroyers, cruisers, and support vessels that made up humanity's modest but capable fleet. One ship, Ryan said thoughtfully. That's all they asked for. Kate stopped walking and turned to look at him. Captain Blake, what do you know about human history? About what happened when peaceful people asked us for help against tyrants and bullies? Ryan thought about the old stories his grandfather had told him. Wars fought not for conquest or resources, but for principles. Humans who traveled across oceans and space itself to fight for strangers who shared their values. They have no idea what they've just asked for, do they? He said. Kate smiled grimly. No, Captain. They asked humanity for help. They asked us to protect innocent people from an empire that thinks might makes right. They offered to share their healing knowledge to save our people if we'll save theirs. She looked out at the shipyards, then at the blue planet hanging in the darkness beyond. Ambassador Naya wanted one ship. She's about to discover that when humans commit to protecting the innocent, we don't do anything halfway. The next morning, Kate Morrison sat in her office composing the most important message of her career. It would go to every human world, every military commander, and every ship captain in the Federation. The message was simple but would change everything. Earth had been asked for help by a peaceful species facing extinction. The request had been accepted. The emergency session of the Federation Council began at dawn. President Jack Sullivan stood before representatives from every human world, his face grave as he read Admiral Morrison's report. The chamber fell silent as he described the Zilani's desperate plea and the threat posed by the Korthak Empire. The question before us is simple, Jack said, his voice carrying across the packed chamber. Do we stand by and watch peaceful beings face extinction, or do we act? Commander Lisa Parker rose from her seat in the intelligence section. As head of Terran intelligence, she had spent the night gathering every piece of data available about the Korthak Empire. The news was worse than anyone had imagined. The Korthak have destroyed entire civilizations, Lisa reported. They don't just conquer, they erase. Any species that resists is wiped out completely. Their own records, which we've intercepted, show they've eliminated 43 different peoples in the last 2 centuries. She activated the chamber's holographic display, showing star maps with red zones marking former civilizations. They're not just after the Zilani healing springs. Intelligence suggests this is the first step in a major expansion toward human space. If they take the Zilani worlds, our outer colonies will be defenseless. General Nick Collins, the Federation's top military leader, stood next. His weathered face showed the strain of a sleepless night spent reviewing battle plans. The Korthak have over 300 warships, but they fight like pirates. They rely on fear and overwhelming force against defenseless targets. They've never faced an organized military response. Representative Maria Santos from the Mars colony raised her hand. General, what exactly are you proposing? The Zilani asked for one ship to show support. Nick looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of representatives from dozens of worlds. The Zilani don't understand humans very well, do they? They asked us to help protect innocent people. They asked us to stop genocide. That's not a job for one ship. President Sullivan stepped forward again. I've been in contact with Admiral Morrison and Fleet Command all night. They've proposed Operation Tsunami, a full mobilization of our military forces. The chamber erupted in discussion. Some representatives worried about the cost and risk. Others argued that humanity had a moral duty to act. The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was never really in doubt. When the vote was called, it passed by an overwhelming margin. Humanity would not send one ship to help the Zilani. They would send everything they had. Within hours of the council vote, the response began. Admiral Karen Smith received orders to return from the outer colonies with the entire 3rd Battle Fleet. Her ships were scattered across a dozen systems, but she began the recall immediately. All vessels. This is Admiral Smith. Her message went out across secure channels. Operation Tsunami is now active. Return to Sol system immediately. This is not a drill. Captain Sam Rodriguez was hauling grain to the mining colonies when the message reached his cargo ship Blue Star. Without hesitation, he dumped his cargo and set course for Earth. His ship wasn't military, but it could carry supplies and troops. That would have to be enough. At the military academy on Luna, Colonel Tony Reeves watched as his communication board lit up with incoming calls. Marine units from across human space were volunteering for deployment. He had expected maybe 2 regiments to answer the call. Instead, he was looking at enough volunteers to outfit 6 full divisions. "Sir," his aide Lieutenant Jenny White reported, "we have over 50,000 Marines requesting immediate deployment." "That's more than our entire active force," Tony smiled grimly. "Then we'd better start training reserves. Fast." Dr. Amy Watson led the emergency session at Fleet Strategic Command. As humanity's top military strategist, she faced the challenge of designing tactics to defeat an enemy that outnumbered human forces 3-1. "The Korthak have never faced coordinated resistance," she explained to her team of analysts. "They're used to attacking defenseless targets. We need to use that against them." Her staff worked around the clock developing new battle formations and strategies. They studied every available piece of intelligence about Korthak ships and tactics. What they found was encouraging. The enemy was powerful but predictable. Throughout human space, the response was the same everywhere. On the agricultural world of New Kansas, farmers converted their grain haulers to carry military supplies. The shipyards of Titan began working triple shifts, retrofitting civilian vessels for combat support roles. Engineer Helen Brooks led the effort at the massive yards orbiting Saturn. Her team worked with desperate efficiency to modify cargo ships, passenger liners, and even luxury yachts for military use. Hospital ships, supply vessels, troop transports, anything that could support the war effort. "We need every ship we can get," Helen told her exhausted crew. "Those Zilani people are counting on us, and I'll be damned if we let them down." The most surprising response came from Earth's civilian population. Recruitment centers were overwhelmed with volunteers. People who had never considered military service lined up for hours to enlist. The waiting list grew so long that new training facilities had to be built. Captain Linda Foster left her comfortable position as a civilian doctor to command the hospital ship UES Mercy. When asked why she was giving up a lucrative practice to risk her life for aliens she had never met, her answer was simple. "They're healers," she said. "They spend their lives saving others just like I do. If someone wants to destroy them for that, then they'll have to go through us first." The response wasn't just military. Scientists and engineers volunteered to study Zilani technology and develop new weapons. Teachers signed up to help communicate with alien allies. Artists and writers joined to document humanity's first great crusade among the stars. Ambassador. Naya watched all of this with growing amazement from her quarters on Luna Base. She had asked for one ship and a small show of force. Instead, she was witnessing the mobilization of an entire civilization. Captain Blake tried to explain what was happening. "Ambassador, you need to understand something about humans. We've spent our entire history fighting bullies and tyrants. When peaceful people ask us for help, we take it personally. But this will cost your people so much," Naya said through her translator. "We cannot repay such generosity." Blake smiled. "You're not paying us, Ambassador. You're giving us the chance to do what's right. That's payment enough." Reports flooded in from across human space. The 7th Fleet was returning from the Centauri sector. Marine battalions were mobilizing on a dozen worlds. Civilian ships were being converted to military use at a rate that amazed even the planners. Within 3 weeks of the council vote, humanity had begun assembling the largest military force in its history. 12 carrier groups, 47 destroyer squadrons, and over 300 support vessels were converging on the Sol system. But it wasn't just about ships and weapons. Chaplain Daniel Clark prepared to minister to troops heading into battle for a righteous cause. Dr. Rachel Turner worked with Zilani healers to understand their biology and culture, preparing to save lives on both sides. As the fleet assembled, word spread to other alien species. The Mentari, crystalline beings with advanced sensors, secretly offered star charts and intelligence. They had suffered under Korthak raids for decades and welcomed human intervention. The Vorthak Confederacy, longtime enemies of the Korthak, sent encrypted messages offering tactical data about enemy ship designs. Even species that barely knew humanity were beginning to hope that someone might finally stand up to the galactic bullies. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of her flagship and watched the greatest armada in human history take shape. Ships arrived daily from every corner of human space, their crews eager to fight for a cause greater than themselves. "Admiral," her communication officer reported. "We have a message from the Korthak Empire. They're demanding to know why human ships are massing in Sol system." Kate smiled coldly. "Tell them they'll find out soon enough." The sight took everyone's breath away. Stretching across space near Luna were more human warships than had ever been assembled in one place. Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the massive dreadnought UES Defiance and watched as the final vessels of her armada moved into formation. 12 carrier groups formed the backbone of the fleet. Each group centered around a massive carrier capable of launching hundreds of fighters. The carriers UES Liberty, UES Freedom, and UES Justice alone carried more firepower than most species possessed in their entire military. Surrounding the carriers were 47 destroyer squadrons, fast attack ships designed for hit-and-run tactics. Captain Steve Johnson had trained their crews personally, teaching them new methods of coordinated assault that no enemy had ever faced. Behind the warships came the support fleet, over 300 vessels that would keep the fighting ships supplied, repaired and ready for battle. Hospital ships, supply transports, repair vessels, and troop carriers formed a moving city that could sustain operations far from home. Colonel Maria Santos walked through the troop bays of the assault carrier UES Storm. Around her, 20,000 Marines prepared for the battles to come. These weren't just soldiers. They were volunteers who had left comfortable lives to fight for people they had never met. "Listen up," Maria addressed her battalion commanders. "We're not fighting for territory or resources. We're fighting because peaceful beings asked us for help. Every Marine in this fleet volunteered to be here. Remember that when things get tough." The elite 1st Orbital Assault Division had trained for 6 months to perfect their new tactics. Unlike traditional ground forces, they would fight in zero gravity, boarding enemy ships and capturing space stations. Their commander, Colonel Tony Reeves, had pushed them harder than any troops in human history. "The Korthak have never faced anything like us," Tony told his officers. "They're used to fighting defenseless targets. When we hit them, it'll be like nothing they've ever experienced." Commander Steve Johnson led the newly formed Void Rangers, specialists trained for the most dangerous missions. They would board crippled enemy ships, rescue captured allies, and fight in environments where one mistake meant death in the vacuum of space. The Medical Corps was just as impressive as the fighting forces. Captain Linda Foster commanded the hospital ship UES Mercy, staffed with the best doctors and nurses from across human space. Dr. Rachel Turner had spent months learning Zilani biology, preparing to treat wounded allies alongside human casualties. "We save everyone we can," Linda told her medical staff. "Human Zilani, even Korthak prisoners if they surrender. That's what separates us from them." In the intelligence section, Commander Lisa Parker coordinated with alien allies who had secretly joined the cause. The Mentari had provided detailed star charts of Korthak space. The Vorthak Confederacy shared intelligence about enemy ship designs and tactics. "The Korthak think they're facing one minor human fleet," Lisa reported to Admiral Morrison. "They have no idea that peaceful species across the galaxy are helping us. When we attack, we'll know their positions better than they do." Engineer Helen Brooks supervised the technical teams that had converted civilian ships for military use. Cargo haulers now carried Marine battalions. Luxury liners had become hospital ships. Even small private yachts served as courier vessels and reconnaissance platforms. The conversion work had been incredible. In 6 months, humanity had effectively doubled the size of its fleet by turning civilian vessels into military assets. Every ship that could fly had been given a role in the operation. Ambassador Naya moved through the fleet on diplomatic visits, still amazed by what her simple request had triggered. She visited the bridge of the UES Defiance and stared at the tactical displays showing hundreds of human ships. "Captain Blake," she said through her translator, "we asked for one ship. How do we explain this to our people?" Ryan smiled as he showed her the fleet roster. "Ambassador, you explain it the same way we did. You tell them that when good people face evil, others will stand with them. Your people aren't alone anymore." The training exercises were impressive to watch. Human tactics emphasized coordination and rapid movement. Ships that fought as squadrons rather than individual vessels. Fighters that attacked in complex patterns no enemy had ever faced. Admiral Karen Smith led mock battles between fleet elements, testing new strategies developed by Dr. Amy Watson's strategic team. The results were encouraging. Human ships fighting together were far more effective than the sum of their individual capabilities. The Korthak have more ships than us, Karen explained to her commanders. But they fight like pirates. Every ship for itself, relying on individual firepower. We fight like a pack, and that makes all the difference. Chaplain Daniel Clark held services throughout the fleet. Soldiers and sailors from dozens of different faiths prayed together for victory and the safety of their comrades. The diversity of belief was matched by unity of purpose. We go to fight for those who cannot fight for themselves, Daniel preached. We carry the hopes of peaceful beings across the galaxy. Whatever our individual beliefs, we all understand the difference between right and wrong. The logistical challenge was enormous. Feeding, housing, and supplying nearly 500,000 people across hundreds of ships required planning on a scale humanity had never attempted. Supply Officer Commander Mike Foster worked around the clock to ensure every ship had what it needed. We're not just moving an army, Mike explained to his exhausted staff. We're moving an entire civilization's worth of support. Every bolt, every meal, every spare part has to be tracked and distributed across light years of space. Intelligence reports from Korthak space grew more disturbing daily. The enemy had accelerated their attacks on Zilani worlds, sensing that something had changed. 3 more Zilani colonies had fallen, their populations enslaved in mining operations. They know something's coming, Admiral Morrison told her senior staff. Korthak intelligence isn't sophisticated, but they're not stupid. They can see we're mobilizing. The final element of the fleet was the most important, the people. From Admiral Morrison on the flagship bridge to Private Jenny White in the Marine barracks, every person in the Armada was a volunteer who had chosen to risk their life for strangers. The diversity was remarkable. Officers from the elite academies served alongside farmers who had learned to fight in 6 months of training. Scientists worked with mechanics, artists with engineers, all united by a common purpose. As the fleet prepared to depart, messages poured in from across human space. Children sent drawings to encourage the troops. Families offered prayers for safe return. Entire worlds declared their support for the mission. But the most moving messages came from other alien species. Peaceful beings across the galaxy had learned of humanity's response to the Zilani plea. Species that had never communicated with humans sent simple messages of gratitude and hope. The humans fight for us, read one message translated from the aquatic Nepheri. They go to battle for beings they have never met. Perhaps the galaxy is not as dark as we feared. Admiral Morrison stood in her ready room, looking out at the assembled armada. Tomorrow they would depart for Zilani space, carrying the hopes of peaceful beings across the galaxy. The weight of responsibility was enormous, but so was her confidence in the people under her command. Captain Blake joined her at the viewport. Admiral, the Zilani Council has sent a final message. They want to know if there's anything else they can do to help. Kate smiled. Tell them they've already done enough. They asked the right people for help. The fleet was ready. 6 months of preparation had produced the greatest military force in human history. More than ships and weapons, it carried humanity's commitment to protecting the innocent and standing against tyranny. Tomorrow, the Korthak Empire would discover what happened when humanity answered a call for help. The human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zilani system, and what they found was worse than their darkest fears. 3 beautiful blue-green worlds that had once been home to billions of Zilani now showed the ugly gray scars of strip mining operations. Massive Korthak ships hung in orbit like mechanical vultures, extracting resources while the native population slaved in underground tunnels. Admiral Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance, her jaw tight with controlled anger. The tactical display showed over 200 Korthak warships scattered throughout the system. They outnumbered the human fleet significantly, but they were spread out and unprepared for coordinated resistance. Admiral, reported Commander Lisa Parker from the intelligence station, we're detecting massive slave labor operations on all 3 occupied worlds. Zilani life signs are showing severe stress. They're working the population to death. Kate's voice was cold as winter when she responded. Then we end this now. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison. We are not here for a show of force or negotiations. We are here to drive these butchers out of Zilani space. All vessels attack formation. Prepare for immediate engagement. The response across the human fleet was instant. Months of training and preparation had led to this moment. Fighter squadrons launched from their carriers like angry hornets. Destroyer groups accelerated toward enemy positions in perfectly coordinated attacks. Warlord Krotak, supreme commander of the Korthak occupation force, watched his sensors with growing disbelief from his flagship Death's Claw. The human fleet wasn't behaving like any military force he had ever encountered. Instead of cautious probing attacks or demands for surrender, they were charging straight into battle with a fury that defied explanation. "How many ships do the humans have?" Krotak demanded of his tactical officer. "Fewer than us, warlord, but they fight in formations we've never seen. Their ships move together like they share one mind." The first engagement, which human historians would later call the Battle of Zelani Gate, began when Captain Greg Murphy led his destroyer squadron Hammer Group in a direct assault on the Korthak command ships. Instead of the traditional single-file attack formation used throughout the galaxy, the human destroyers attacked from 6 different directions simultaneously. Korthak ships were individually more powerful than human vessels, but they had never faced coordinated multi-vector attacks. Death's Claw found itself under fire from enemies approaching from above, below, and all sides at once. Its heavy guns could only target one direction at a time. "Impossible," Krotak roared as his flagship shook under repeated hits. "No species fights this way." Commander Lisa Baker led the 42nd Fighter Wing in an attack that would revolutionize space combat. Instead of the traditional fighter versus fighter duels common in galactic warfare, human pilots ignored enemy fighters completely and focused on attacking capital ships in swarm formations. "Remember your training," Lisa broadcast to her pilots. "Hit them fast, hit them hard, and get out before they can respond. We're not here for glory. We're here to win." The Korthak had never encountered tactics like these. Their fighters were designed for individual combat, while their capital ships expected to face other capital ships in direct confrontations. Human fighters attacking in coordinated groups while human capital ships provided overlapping fire support was something their battle doctrine couldn't handle. As the space battle raged, Colonel Maria Santos prepared for the first ground assault. Intelligence reports showed that Zelani civilians were being held in underground mining complexes on Beta 7, one of the occupied worlds. The orbital bombardment had damaged the planet's defensive systems, but thousands of Zelani lives hung in the balance. "Listen up, Marines," Maria addressed the assault troops packed into their drop pods. "The Korthak think they're facing another weak species they can bully. They're about to learn that humans don't abandon our friends." The orbital assault began at dawn on Beta 7's primary continent. 100 drop pods streaked through the atmosphere like falling stars, each carrying 10 Marines trained for close-quarters combat in hostile environments. The Korthak defenders had never seen anything like it. Korthak ground tactics relied on overwhelming firepower and terror weapons designed to break enemy morale. But human Marines didn't break. They advanced through enemy fire with determination that amazed even their own officers. When one squad was pinned down, another would attack from an unexpected direction. Sergeant Julie White, a combat medic with the 3rd Marine Battalion, found herself treating wounded Zelani civilians in a mining complex that had just been liberated. The aliens were in terrible condition, malnourished, injured, and traumatized by months of slavery. "Don't worry," Julie told them through a translation device as she worked. "You're safe now. The humans are here." One elderly Zelani, his blue skin scarred by mining equipment, looked at her with amazement. "You came for us. We are not your people, but you came." Julie smiled as she bandaged his wounds. "Now you are our people. Anyone who needs protection is our people." The space battle continued with increasing intensity. Warlord Krotak found his carefully planned defensive formations falling apart under human attacks that came from impossible directions. Human ships appeared where they shouldn't be, struck with devastating precision, and vanished before retaliation was possible. "They fight like madmen," his tactical officer reported. "No concern for losses, no regard for conventional tactics." But Krotak was wrong. Human casualties were actually lower than projected because of their superior coordination. Ships that fought together could protect each other. Squadrons that attacked in formation could overwhelm enemies before taking serious damage themselves. Admiral Karen Smith led the 3rd Battle Fleet in a flanking maneuver that caught an entire Korthak squadron by surprise. Her ships had used the system's asteroid belt to approach undetected, emerging behind enemy lines like ghosts from the void. "All ships, concentrated fire on their command vessel," Karen ordered. "Take out their coordination and the rest will fall apart." The Korthak flagship Blood Drinker exploded in a brilliant flash that lit up the asteroid field. Without their command ship, The entire enemy squadron began fighting as individual vessels instead of a coordinated force. They were defeated in minutes. News of human intervention spread rapidly across the galaxy through channels the Korthak couldn't monitor. The Mentari, with their crystalline communication networks, carried word to dozens of peaceful species. For the first time in centuries, civilizations that had lived in fear began to hope. On the peaceful world of Etheria, the crystalline beings held their first celebration in living memory. The aquatic Nefari sang songs that had been forgotten for generations. Species that had hidden in fear for decades began to believe that the galaxy's bullies could be defeated. But the war was far from over. As reports of defeat reached other parts of the Korthak Empire, reinforcements began moving toward Zalani space. Warlord Krotak sent desperate messages calling for support from the main Korthak fleet. The humans fight unlike any species we have encountered, his message warned. They show no fear, take no prisoners, and their tactics are incomprehensible. We need immediate reinforcement or we will lose this system. The response from the Korthak High Command was swift and brutal. Emperor Vorthak himself would lead the main battle fleet to crush this human insolence. No minor species would be allowed to challenge Korthak supremacy. As the first day of battle ended, Admiral Morrison reviewed the results with her senior staff. 3 enemy squadrons had been destroyed or scattered. The ground assault had liberated 2 slave labor camps. But intelligence reported that massive Korthak reinforcements were on their way. How long until the main enemy fleet arrives? Kate asked. 48 hours, Lisa Parker reported. Intelligence suggests over 400 additional ships, including Emperor Vorthak's personal dreadnought. Kate nodded grimly. Then we'd better finish liberating the occupied worlds before they get here. All fleet commanders prepare for continuous operations. We're not leaving any Zalani in chains when the real fight begins. Throughout the fleet, human forces prepared for the battles to come. They had proven that coordination and determination could defeat superior numbers. Now they would face the ultimate test. The full military might of an empire built on conquest and terror. But as Captain Blake looked out at the stars where human and allied ships moved in perfect formation, he felt no fear. Humanity had answered the call for help and they would see it through to the end, no matter the cost. The final battle began at dawn on the 3rd day, when the Korthak Emperor's war fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel near Aquatica Prime. Emperor Vorthak himself commanded from his massive dreadnought Galaxy's End, a ship larger than most space stations and armed with weapons that could crack planets. Admiral Kate Morrison watched the enemy fleet deploy from the bridge of the UES Defiance. 437 Korthak warships spread across space in the largest military formation the galaxy had seen in 1,000 years. Against them, humanity had assembled every ship they could muster. 312 vessels carrying the hopes of peaceful species across the galaxy. All ships. This is Admiral Morrison, Kate broadcast across the human fleet. Today we fight not just for the Zalani, but for every peaceful being in the galaxy. Today we show the universe that bullies and tyrants will not be tolerated. Today we make our stand. The response from the human fleet was immediate. Every ship acknowledged ready status. Fighter squadrons launched from their carriers in perfect formation. Marine assault teams prepared for boarding actions. This would be the largest space battle in human history. Emperor Vorthak studied the tactical display with growing anger. The humans had positioned their fleet between his forces and Aquatica Prime, protecting the sacred Zalani world with their own bodies. It was exactly the kind of pointless heroism he had expected from a weak species. Destroy them all, Vorthak commanded his fleet. Show the galaxy what happens to those who oppose the Korthak Empire. Leave no human ship intact. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies for centuries. The Korthak attacked in traditional fashion, massive formations designed to overwhelm through sheer firepower. But the human fleet scattered into smaller groups that attacked from multiple directions simultaneously. Colonel Tony Reeves led the first boarding assault against a Korthak heavy cruiser. His Void Rangers used small, fast ships to get close to enemy vessels, then cut through their hulls with advanced cutting tools. Fighting inside enemy ships in zero gravity was the most dangerous mission in warfare, but the Marines moved with precision born of months of training. Remember, Tony broadcast to his assault teams, we're not here to capture ships. We're here to rescue Zalani prisoners and gather intelligence. Get in, complete the mission, get out. The Korthak had never faced boarding actions before. Their ships were designed to fight other ships, not trained soldiers moving through their corridors. Within an hour, 3 enemy cruisers had been neutralized by Marine boarding parties. Captain Sam Rodriguez found his moment of glory when Korthak reinforcements threatened to overwhelm the hospital ship UES Mercy. His converted freighter Blue Star was no match for a Korthak battlecruiser, but Sam didn't hesitate. He aimed his ship directly at the enemy vessel and activated maximum acceleration. "This is Captain Rodriguez to all ships," he broadcast calmly. "Tell my wife I love her. Tell my kids their daddy fought for something that mattered." The collision destroyed both ships in a brilliant explosion, but the hospital ship escaped with thousands of wounded Zilani civilians. Sam's sacrifice saved more lives than he could have imagined. Commander Steve Johnson led his fighter squadron in the most daring attack of the battle. Intelligence had located Emperor Vorthak's flagship, and Steve volunteered to lead a direct assault on the massive dreadnought. It was almost certainly a suicide mission, but it might give the rest of the fleet the opening they needed. "All fighters, this is Commander Johnson. We're going after the big one. Stay tight, stay fast, and remember, we're fighting for every peaceful being in the galaxy." 36 human fighters attacked the galaxy's end, dodging defensive fire that could have destroyed small moons. Steve's ship took multiple hits as he led the final attack run, but he managed to plant explosives on the enemy flagship's main weapon systems before his fighter was destroyed. The loss of their primary weapons threw the Korthak fleet into confusion. Ships that had relied on overwhelming firepower suddenly found themselves vulnerable to coordinated human attacks. Admiral Morrison seized the moment to order a general advance. "All ships converge on the enemy flagship. Today we end the Korthak Empire's reign of terror." Emperor Vorthak watched his empire's greatest fleet falling apart around him. Human tactics made no sense. They sacrificed individual ships to save others, fought with a coordination that defied explanation, and showed no fear of death when fighting for their principles. "Impossible," Vorthak muttered as another of his squadrons was destroyed by a coordinated human attack. "No species fights this way. They have nothing to gain from victory here." His tactical officer, one of the few Korthak who had studied other species, looked up from his instruments. "Emperor, I think that's exactly the point. They're not fighting for gain. They're fighting for their beliefs." As defeat became inevitable, Emperor Vorthak made the decision that revealed the true evil of his empire. If he could not have Aquatica Prime, he would ensure no one else could either. He ordered his surviving ships to target the planet itself. "If we cannot rule the galaxy," Vorthak declared, "then we will demonstrate the price of opposing us. Destroy Aquatica Prime. Kill every Zilani on the planet. Let that be our message to any who would stand against the Korthak Empire." The order horrified even some of his own officers, but discipline in the Korthak military was absolute. Surviving ships began targeting the beautiful blue world below, preparing to commit genocide on a scale that would shock the galaxy. Commander Lisa Baker, now in command of the fighter wing after Steve Johnson's sacrifice, led the desperate mission to stop the planetary bombardment. Her pilots had to penetrate the defensive fire of dozens of enemy ships to reach the weapon systems targeting Aquatica Prime. "This is it, people," Lisa broadcast to her surviving pilots. "Everything we've fought for comes down to this moment. Those are innocent people down there. Our friends. Our allies. We don't let them die." The final assault cost humanity nearly half its remaining fighters, but they succeeded in stopping the bombardment. When the last Korthak targeting computer was destroyed, Emperor Vorthak found himself trapped aboard a crippled flagship with human marines cutting through his hull. Colonel Maria Santos led the final boarding action personally. After days of battle, she wanted to look the enemy commander in the eye and deliver humanity's judgment. She found Emperor Vorthak on his bridge, surrounded by the bodies of officers who had died defending their positions. "You have destroyed my empire," Vorthak said with hatred burning in his alien eyes. "But others will rise to take our place. The galaxy belongs to the strong." Maria looked at the defeated emperor with contempt. "The galaxy belongs to those with the courage to protect the innocent. That's something you never understood." The battle ended with the capture of Emperor Vorthak and the surrender of his remaining forces. Of the 437 ships that had attacked Aquatica Prime, fewer than 50 survived to surrender. The Korthak Empire's reign of terror was over, but victory came at a terrible price. Humanity had lost nearly a third of its fleet, including some of its finest officers and crew. Captain Rodriguez, Commander Johnson, and thousands of others would never return home. Their sacrifice weighed heavily on every survivor. The victory celebration on Aquatica Prime was subdued, honoring both the human sacrifice and Zilani gratitude. Ambassador Naya, now serving as the Zilani Minister of Defense, spoke at the memorial service for the human dead. "They came when we called," Naya said, her translator carrying the emotion in her voice. "They fought when we could not. They died so that we might live. We will never forget what humanity has done for us." But the war's end brought unexpected consequences. News of humanity's victory spread across the galaxy faster than anyone had imagined. Species that had hidden in fear for generations began to hope. Peaceful civilizations started to believe that the galaxy's bullies could be defeated. Dr. Amy Watson found herself tasked with establishing a joint military academy where humans would train other species in defensive strategies. The facility, built in orbit around Aquatica Prime, would become a symbol of cooperation between species committed to protecting the innocent. Admiral Morrison received delegations from 17 different peaceful species, all requesting assistance in defending their worlds from aggressive neighbors. Humanity realized they had inadvertently become the galaxy's protectors, a role they had never sought but could not abandon. "We never asked to be galactic peacekeepers," Admiral Morrison told the Federation Council when she returned to Earth. "But when peaceful beings ask for help, we can't turn them away. That's who we are as a species." The construction of humanity's first extrasolar military academy began within months of the victory. Funded jointly by dozens of grateful species, the facility would train a new generation of defenders committed to protecting the innocent, regardless of species or origin. Captain Blake, now promoted to admiral, watched Zilani and human engineers working side by side on the Academy's construction. The sight filled him with hope for the future. The galaxy was becoming a safer place, one alliance at a time. The Korthak Empire's remnants scattered to the outer regions of the galaxy, but their defeat had sent a clear message to other aggressive